The diplomatic vessel Luminous Accord entered Earth's solar system with calculated precision, its crystalline hull refracting sunlight in patterns that would be visible from Earth's surface as a kaleidoscope of colors. Admiral Vexthor stood on the command deck, her translucent exoskeleton glittering with neural activity as she observed the approaching blue-green planet. "Fascinating," she remarked to her second-in-command, a towering Kithrax named Klovex. "They've detected our approach but have made no defensive preparations, either supremely confident or remarkably naive." Klovex chittered softly, multiple compound eyes processing the sensor data. "Perhaps both, Admiral. Their communications networks are buzzing with activity, but their military vessels remain in standard orbit. They appear to be celebrating our arrival." The first transmission from Earth came not from a military authority or governmental body, but from a collective of scientific institutions. Their chosen representative, Dr. Elena Reyes, appeared on the main view screen with a calm demeanor that surprised the hegemony crew. "Greetings, visitors," she said, her voice translated flawlessly by the ship's systems. "Earth welcomes the galactic hegemony. We've been monitoring your approach and have prepared suitable landing coordinates. We look forward to peaceful dialogue." Vexthor's crystalline features couldn't express surprise in ways humans would recognize, but the sudden pulse of blue light through her form spoke volumes to her crew. The humans knew who they were before introductions had even been made. The landing delegation discovered a reception area prepared with remarkable attention to detail, atmospheric composition adjusted for each species' comfort, gravity plating installed to accommodate the varied physiological needs of the hegemony representatives, and information packets containing comprehensive data about Earth's governments, resources, and technological capabilities. "They'd been preparing for this moment," observed Science Officer Telmar, a vril whose floating gelatinous form hovered anxiously beside the Admiral. "The question is, for how long?" The formal introduction ceremony unfolded in a vast auditorium, with representatives from Earth's nations gathered to meet the hegemony delegation. Admiral Vexthor delivered the standard category assessment speech, explaining the hegemony structure and Earth's evaluated position with diplomatic precision. "Based on our comprehensive analysis of your technological development, biological capabilities, and resource management," she concluded, "Earth is offered Category 9 membership in the galactic hegemony. This provides protection, limited technology exchange, and observational status on the Outer Council." There was a momentary silence as the human representatives exchanged glances. Vexthor had overseen dozens of first contact protocols, and this was typically when protests began: demands for higher status, negotiations for better technology access, occasionally even threats of resistance. Instead, Dr. Reyes stepped forward with a slight smile. "The nations of Earth accept Category 9 membership with gratitude. We understand our position and look forward to learning from the hegemony's wisdom." Later, aboard the Luminous Accord, Intelligence Officer Zrelka reviewed the day's recordings with growing curiosity. "They accepted without hesitation, Admiral. No species has ever done that before." Vexthor's crystalline form pulsed with thoughtful patterns of light. "Indeed, most concerning is not what they asked for, but what they didn't ask." Which was, they never inquired about advancement criteria. They never asked how to climb from Category 9. Either they don't aspire to rise at all, or they already have a plan, Zrelka finished. Vexthor turned her faceted gaze toward the slowly rotating Earth below. "Begin comprehensive monitoring protocols. Something tells me our newest members bear closer observation than most." 3 months into Earth's integration, Intelligence Officer Zrelka found herself studying security footage from Maintenance Level 6 of the Hegemony Station Celestial Anchor. The grainy holographic replay showed a human technician named David Okafor deliberately requesting assignment to repair a radiation leak in the primary coolant systems, a job typically reserved for the radiation-resistant Taurians. "Replay segment Delta 9, she instructed the system. The footage showed Okafor carefully documenting each step of the repair, his environmental suit's external camera capturing every connection and bypass procedure. Zrelka's scaled brow furrowed. This was the 17th such incident she had catalogued this week alone. Humans volunteering for the most dangerous, unpleasant, or complex maintenance tasks throughout hegemony operations. Her communication panel chimed. Intelligence Officer, Admiral Vexthor requests your preliminary findings. Minutes later, Zrelka stood before the Admiral in her private chambers, the crystalline officer's form pulsing with patterns that indicated both interest and concern. They're learning our systems, Zrelka reported, displaying a holographic map of hegemony operations with red indicators where humans had requested special assignments. Not just learning, mastering them. Each human averages 16 different system certifications in their first 90 days. The previous record for a new species was 4. Vexthor's crystalline form refracted light in a pattern indicating deep thought. Purpose. Unclear, Admiral. When questioned, they provide reasonable explanations. Okafor claimed radiation repair knowledge was transferable to multiple systems. Chen in communications cited professional curiosity. Washington in defense said he was covering staff shortages. All plausible, noted Vexthor. Yes, but collectively suspicious. I've cross-referenced their assignments. Within 3 months, humans have collectively experienced every critical system in hegemony operations, every life support configuration, every power distribution node, every emergency protocol. The Admiral's form darkened momentarily. The crystalline equivalent of a troubled frown. Access their private communications. Already done. Zrelka pulled up another holographic display. They're sharing information extensively among themselves. Technical manuals, operational procedures, emergency protocols, all being distributed through their internal network. But here's what's curious. She highlighted a section of data. They're organizing the information by failure scenarios, not systems. Categories like total power loss, atmospheric compromise, navigation failure during FTL. Before Vexthor could respond, her communication panel chimed urgently. A Kithrax officer appeared, compound eyes blinking rapidly in distress. Admiral, we have a situation in the Proxima sector. The passenger liner Eternal Horizon is experiencing critical systems failure after encountering an unknown spatial anomaly. 7,000 passengers, including council representatives from all major species. Vexthor's form pulsed with decisive patterns. Dispatch rescue vessels immediately. Already done, Admiral. But the Kithrax hesitated. The human contingent has requested permission to assist. They claim to have relevant experience. What experience could they possibly have with spatial anomalies? Zrelka scoffed. The Kithrax's antennae twitched nervously. According to their request, they'd been running simulations of precisely this type of scenario since their arrival. They're already preparing a specialized team led by a junior officer named Sarah Chen. Vexthor and Zrelka exchanged meaningful glances. The intelligence officer accessed Chen's file instantly. Communications specialist, Zrelka reported, but she's logged training hours in spatial physics, emergency field stabilization, and, her voice faltered slightly, reactor core emergency procedures. How convenient. Vexthor's form pulsed with suspicious patterns, almost as if they'd been preparing for a catastrophe since day one. Zrelka finished. Chaos enveloped the command deck of the Eternal Horizon as the massive transport ship shuddered violently. The spatial anomaly had expanded without warning, enveloping the vessel in swirling patterns of distorted spacetime that the ship's sensors couldn't properly interpret. Shields failing at 78% degradation, reported a Kithrax officer, multiple limbs working frantically across control surfaces. Hull integrity compromised on decks 7 through 11. Admiral Vexthor, who had been aboard for a diplomatic conference, stood rigid as her crystalline form pulsed with emergency command patterns. Status of the Taurian containment efforts. A luminous Taurian representative, their energy form flickering with strain, hovered near the main view screen. We cannot stabilize the field. The anomaly resists standard energy manipulation. We have perhaps 18 minutes before complete failure. The Vril hive mind counselor, a shimmering mass of interconnected neural tissue suspended in a containment field, emitted a series of harmonic pulses, calculating survival probability. 0.037%. Recommended action. Immediate evacuation of essential personnel. Evacuation pods would be torn apart in the anomaly, Vexthor countered, her form darkening with the crystalline equivalent of grim determination. We survive together, or not at all. A soft voice cut through the tense atmosphere. Permission to approach, Admiral. All eyes turned to the human communications officer, Sarah Chen. She stood at the edge of the command platform, clutching a data tablet and looking remarkably calm amid the chaos. This is hardly the time, Officer Chen. Vexthor's form pulsed with impatience. With respect, Admiral, this is exactly the time, Chen replied, stepping forward. I believe I can create an exit vector through the anomaly. The Vril counselor's harmonic pulses intensified. Impossible. The space-time distortion follows no predictable pattern. That's because you're trying to stabilize it, Chen said, connecting her tablet to the main navigation console. I'm proposing we do the opposite. We use controlled destabilization to create a momentary corridor. Vexthor's crystalline features couldn't express shock in human terms, but her sudden brilliance conveyed it clearly. Explain. Chen's fingers flew across the console, bringing up a simulation. We intentionally overload the port maneuvering thrusters while simultaneously venting plasma from the starboard emergency systems. The asymmetrical energy release will create a temporary distortion that, paired with a precisely timed warp core fluctuation, should generate enough localized space-time compression to punch us through. The Kithrax navigation officer's antennae flattened against his carapace. That procedure combines elements from 5 different emergency protocols, none of which were designed to work together. Exactly, Chen nodded. The anomaly doesn't respond to standard approaches because it doesn't follow standard physics. We need to think outside normal parameters. The Vril counselor emitted concerned harmonics. This approach has a 97% chance of catastrophic failure. And doing nothing has a 99.963% chance, Chen countered. I'll take the improvement. Admiral Vexthor studied the human officer intently, her crystalline form cycling through analytical patterns. How did you develop this solution? Chen looked up, meeting the Admiral's gaze directly. Emergency simulation training. Sir, we've been running scenarios since our inclusion in the hegemony. This particular approach combines elements from reactor failure, spatial distortion, and gravitational collapse protocols. You've been preparing for this specific emergency? Zrelka asked, suspicion evident in her tone. Not specifically. Chen shook her head slightly. We prepare for all emergencies. It's what humans do. A violent shudder ran through the ship. Warning indicators flashed across every console. 16 minutes to catastrophic failure, the Kithrax officer announced. Admiral Vexthor's form pulsed decisively. Implement Officer Chen's protocol immediately. As the crew rushed to execute her instructions, Chen took a deep breath and whispered to herself, just like the simulations. The Grand Council chamber fell silent as David Okafor completed his demonstration. The maintenance technician had just shown how a simple power fluctuation in the chamber's environmental systems could cascade into life support failure within minutes, a vulnerability that had gone undetected for centuries. And that concludes our 5th critical finding, Okafor said, deactivating the holographic simulation. Our team has prepared implementation-ready solutions for each vulnerability identified so far. Admiral Vexthor's crystalline form pulsed with thoughtful patterns as she surveyed the chamber. The Vril counselors, usually dismissive of Category 9 species, had fallen completely silent. The Taurian representatives hovered in place, their energy forms flickering with what could only be described as embarrassment. This Human Safety Commission was formed as a courtesy, Vexthor noted, addressing the assembled council. Yet in 14 days, they have identified more systemic vulnerabilities than our own security divisions discovered in the past century. The chief Kithrax engineer, Tulvok, clicked his mandibles in agitation. The findings are concerning, certainly, but I question the humans' methods. They appear to be actively seeking ways our systems could fail. Isn't that precisely what a safety review should do? Okafor asked, his tone respectful but firm. Tulvok's compound eyes narrowed. There is a difference between standard safety protocols and catastrophe planning. Your species seems fixated on worst-case scenarios. A slight smile crossed Okafor's face. On Earth, we have a saying, hope for the best, plan for the worst. Meanwhile, in a secure monitoring station 3 levels below the council chamber, Intelligence Officer Zrelka reviewed the burgeoning human database with growing concern. She had gained access to their internal information network, not particularly difficult, as the humans had minimal encryption by hegemony standards. What troubled her wasn't that they were collecting sensitive information. It was how they were organizing it. Computer, display category structure, she commanded. The holographic display reconfigured to show a vast interconnected web of knowledge. Unlike the hegemony's hierarchical information systems, the human database was organized around failure scenarios. Atmospheric compromise, power distribution collapse, navigation system failure, communication blackout, hostile species encounter. Each category contained meticulous documentation on hegemony systems, complete with step-by-step protocols for maintaining critical functions during catastrophic failure. This isn't just a safety review, Zrelka murmured. They're creating a survival manual. Her communication panel chimed. Admiral Vexthor's crystalline face appeared, pulsing with urgent patterns. Report to my private chambers immediately, the Admiral ordered. Bring everything you have on the Human Information Network. 20 minutes later, Zrelka stood before Vexthor, having presented her findings in detail. Your assessment? The Admiral asked, her form glimmering with rapid analytical patterns. They're preparing for total systemic failure of the hegemony, Zrelka stated bluntly. Every bit of information they've gathered, every system they've studied, it all focuses on how to maintain function during catastrophe. Possible motivations. Zrelka hesitated. 2 primary possibilities. First, they could be plotting to cause these failures themselves, a concerning but unlikely scenario given their limited resources. Second, Vexthor prompted. They genuinely expect things to go wrong and are preparing accordingly. It's as if catastrophe planning is intrinsic to their psychology. Vexthor's form pulsed contemplatively, summoned their leadership representative, quietly. When Dr. Helena Reyes arrived 30 minutes later, she showed no surprise at being called to an unscheduled private meeting with the Admiral. You've discovered our database, she stated simply, not bothering with pleasantries. Vexthor's form brightened with surprise. You knew we would find it. Reyes nodded calmly. Of course, we made it easy to find once we had gathered sufficient data. Why? Asked Zrelka. Because now, Reyes said with a slight smile, we need to talk about what's coming. Admiral Vexthor's crystalline form pulsed with emergency patterns as the reports flooded in from across hegemony space. 3 major hub worlds under simultaneous attack. Defensive grids failing. Communications networks compromised. The Chaksti vessels are using some form of resonance weapon, reported the Taurian commander, his energy form fluctuating wildly. It disrupts our cohesion. We cannot maintain battle formations. The Archon defense platforms are failing, added a crystalline officer. Their weapons match our harmonic frequency perfectly, as if they've studied our vulnerabilities extensively. Vexthor accessed the tactical display. 17 hegemony warships destroyed. 4 worlds under siege. and the Chexthi fleet was advancing toward the central systems with methodical precision. "They shouldn't even exist," muttered Zrelka, who stood at Vexthor's side. "The Chexthi were eradicated 8,000 years ago." "Apparently not," Vexthor replied grimly. The communication panel chimed with an incoming transmission from an unexpected source. The screen illuminated to show Dr. Helena Reyes, surrounded by what appeared to be a human military command center. "Admiral," Reyes acknowledged, her calm demeanor unchanged despite the chaos. "I believe it's time to implement Protocol Thermopylae." Vexthor's form dimmed with suspicion. "You knew this attack was coming." "Not specifically," Reyes shook her head, "but we recognized patterns in your historical records that suggested the Chexthi might have survived in deep space. Their attack vectors align with dormant wormhole signatures our scientists identified 3 months ago." "And you said nothing?" Zrelka demanded. "We did," Reyes countered. "It's all in our safety database under Extinct Species Resurgence and Deep Space Threat Assessment. But more importantly, we prepared." The tactical display updated with new information. A network of human ships taking positions throughout hegemony space in a configuration that made no strategic sense to Vexthor's experienced eye. "What is Protocol Thermopylae?" the Admiral asked. "A defensive strategy drawn from Earth's ancient history," Reyes explained. "A small force holding a critical position against overwhelming odds. We've adapted it for space warfare." Before Vexthor could respond, a Kithrax commander broke into the channel. "Admiral, the Chexthi have altered course. They're targeting the Earth sector directly." A cold feeling washed through Vexthor's crystalline structure. "They're targeting the weakest world first." To her surprise, Reyes smiled. "Exactly as we predicted. They see us as the most vulnerable member of the hegemony." "They're wrong." The tactical display shifted to Earth's system, where an astonishing transformation was underway. Civilian vessels were moving into defensive formations. Orbital platforms that had appeared decorative were revealing concealed weapon systems. The planet's surface glowed with activated shield generators that hadn't been there during the hegemony's initial assessment. "Earth has been preparing for planetary defense since before we made contact with the hegemony," Reyes explained. "It's in our nature to expect invasion, Admiral." The first wave of Chexthi vessels entered Earth's system, weapons primed. They encountered not the token resistance expected from a Category 9 world, but a fully mobilized population executing a defense that seemed choreographed precisely for this enemy. "Their formations," Zrelka whispered in astonishment. "The humans are creating deliberate weaknesses that become traps when the Chexthi target them." Vexthor watched as the supposedly primitive human vessels performed maneuvers that seemed suicidal, until the moment they revealed their tactical purpose. They weren't fighting like an advanced civilization. They were fighting like survivors who had imagined this exact scenario countless times. "Protocol Thermopylae is just the beginning," Reyes said quietly. "We have contingencies for every scenario. It's what we do best." The Grand Council chamber had never been so crowded. Representatives from every hegemony species packed the tiered seating, their attention fixed on the central platform, where Admiral Helena Reyes stood beside a simple holographic projector. The Chexthi threat had been contained, not eliminated, but pushed back to the outer reaches of known space, and now the hegemony wanted answers. "You will explain," demanded the Vril counselor, their neural mass pulsating with agitation, "how a Category 9 species predicted and prepared for an invasion by an enemy they had never encountered." Reyes nodded calmly. "To understand that, you need to understand humanity's relationship with catastrophe." She activated the projector, which displayed a timeline of Earth's history. "While your civilizations evolved toward greater harmony and specialization, humans evolved expecting things to go wrong." Images appeared above the platform. Ancient cave paintings depicting hunts gone awry, historical texts describing plagues and famines, photographs of natural disasters. "For most of our history, survival meant anticipating the next crisis," Reyes continued. Our earliest ancestors lived in a state of constant vigilance against predators. Our civilizations rose and fell through wars, plagues, and environmental shifts. Even as we developed technology, we remained fundamentally aware of our fragility. She gestured, and the display shifted to show libraries filled with books. These are what we call apocalyptic fiction, stories about the end of our world. We have thousands of them, imagining countless ways civilization might collapse. Asteroid impacts, pandemics, climate disasters, alien invasions. While your cultures created art celebrating harmony, we created entertainment simulating our own extinction. A murmur ran through the chamber as translation systems conveyed her words. You find this disturbing, Rise acknowledged. But for humans, it's simply how we process risk. We imagine the worst so we can prepare for it. Admiral Vexthor's crystalline form pulsed with thoughtful patterns. The human safety database. It wasn't created in response to the Chexthi specifically. No, Rise confirmed. It was our standard approach to joining a new community. Identify vulnerabilities, develop contingencies, prepare for failures. When we detected those dormant wormhole signatures, we added it to our assessment of possible threats, not because we knew the Chexthi would emerge, but because we prepare for all conceivable dangers. The Taurian representative's energy form flickered with incredulity. Your entire species thinks this way. To varying degrees, yes, Rise replied. Our children play games about surviving disasters. Our entertainment simulates crisis. Our most popular stories often involve heroes facing seemingly insurmountable odds. She smiled slightly. We accepted our place at the back of your galactic society because that position suited our nature perfectly. We don't seek to lead during prosperity. We prepare, we watch, and we wait. Intelligence officer Zrelka stepped forward. The positions your people requested throughout our systems, they weren't random. You were placing yourselves precisely where you could respond most effectively to catastrophic failures. Correct, Rise nodded. Engine rooms, emergency response teams, maintenance sectors, backup systems. We positioned ourselves where we could do the most good when, not if, things went wrong. A species of contingency planners, murmured Vexthor, her crystalline structure illuminating with new understanding. Rise gestured again, and the holographic display showed Earth's history of exploration. Ancient mariners with redundant navigation systems, wilderness expeditions with backup supplies, modern emergency services constantly training for disasters that might never come. This is why we sit in the rear. Admiral, Rise concluded quietly, not because we are weak, but because that is where you need us most. In your perfect, harmonious galaxy, someone needs to be watching for the monsters that lurk in deep space. Someone needs to be ready when systems fail. Someone needs to expect catastrophe. The 17th day of the Grand Council's extraordinary session began with an unusual sight. Admiral Vexthor's crystalline form stood beside the Vril Counselor, the Taurian representative, and the Kithrax Elder. The four dominant species of the hegemony united in a rare display of consensus. This council has deliberated extensively on the proper classification of humanity, Vexthor announced, her form pulsing with formal patterns. We have reviewed their actions during the Chexthi crisis, their systematic approach to hegemony systems, and their unique psychological adaptation to uncertainty. The chamber fell silent as the assembled representatives waited for the verdict. Dr. Helena Reyes stood calmly at the center of the platform, flanked by David Okafor and Sarah Chen, the human contingent looking remarkably at ease despite the scrutiny of thousands of alien eyes. Our initial assessment was based on conventional metrics, Vexthor continued. Technological advancement, resource management, biological capabilities. By these standards, Earth remains a developing world. However, her crystalline structure brightened significantly. We failed to measure what may be humanity's most valuable evolutionary advantage, their intrinsic preparation for crisis. The Vril Counselor's neural mass pulsated in harmony with Vexthor's words. The evidence is conclusive. During the Proxima anomaly, Officer Chen combined 5 disparate emergency protocols to save 7,000 lives. During the Safety Commission review, the human team identified critical vulnerabilities that had eluded our security systems for centuries. And during the Checks the Invasion, Earth's defense strategy demonstrated a level of contingency planning unprecedented in hegemony history. The Taurian representative's energy form expanded slightly. We have confirmed that humanity's database contained preparations for 47 distinct catastrophic scenarios, including 18 that the hegemony had never seriously considered. They did not specifically predict the Checks the return. They simply prepared for all conceivable threats, known and unknown. The Kithrax elder stepped forward, mandibles clicking rhythmically. Most remarkable is how humans position themselves throughout our systems, always in support roles, always in critical junctures where they could respond to emergencies. They did not seek command. They sought to serve as what they call a safety net. Admiral Vexthor's form pulsed with decisive patterns. Therefore, this council proposes an unprecedented reclassification. Humanity will be designated Category 0. Contingency Specialists. A murmur swept through the chamber. No species had ever received such a designation. This classification acknowledges humanity's unique value to the hegemony. Vexthor continued. Human advisors will be integrated throughout all critical systems, not for their technological expertise, but for their distinctive ability to anticipate and respond to chaos. Reyes stepped forward. The people of Earth are honored by this recognition, Admiral. However, I should note that our preferred operational pattern will remain largely unchanged. Explain, requested the Vril counselor. We still wish to serve primarily in support positions, Rice clarified. Engine rooms, emergency response teams, backup systems, the rear of your operations, as it were. Not because we must, but because that's where we function best. The Kithrax elder's compound eyes registered confusion. But such a designation would permit humans to hold positions of greater prominence and authority. Reyes smiled slightly. With respect, Elder, we don't seek prominence. We seek to be in the right place when things go wrong. For us, that's not at the helm during peacetime, but at the critical junctures during crisis. Admiral Vexthor's crystalline form pulsed with what could only be described as amused understanding. So even with this unprecedented reclassification, we'll still be sitting in the rear, Reyes nodded. By choice. 1 year after humanity's reclassification, the hegemony had transformed in subtle but profound ways. Emergency response times had improved by 42%. Casualty rates from system failures had dropped to historic lows. The Checks the remained at bay, their once fearsome fleet now scattered across the outer reaches, unable to penetrate the new defensive protocols established with human consultation. Admiral Vexthor stood at the observation deck of the Galactic Council headquarters, her crystalline form refracting the light of distant stars as she contemplated these changes. She was joined by intelligence officer Zrelka, who had been tasked with monitoring the integration of human advisors throughout hegemony space. The latest reports are unexpected, Zrelka noted, displaying a holographic summary. Despite their Category 0 classification, 93% of human personnel continue to request assignments in support positions. Engine rooms, maintenance sectors, emergency response teams. The positions they've always preferred, Vexthor observed, her form pulsing with thoughtful patterns. Yes, but now they could command entire fleets if they wished, Zrelka pointed out. Yet they consistently decline leadership promotions. The observation deck doors slid open as Admiral Helena Reyes arrived for their scheduled meeting. She wore the new insignia of her Category 0 classification, but otherwise appeared unchanged. The same calm demeanor, the same observant eyes scanning the room with practiced efficiency. Admiral Reyes, Vexthor greeted her, crystalline form brightening in acknowledgement. We were just discussing your species' curious reluctance to accept command positions. Reyes smiled slightly. Is it really so curious? We've been quite clear about our preferred role. But surely some humans must crave authority. Zrelka pressed. Power and status are universal motivators across sentient species. Not universal, Rice corrected gently. For humans, purpose often outweighs status, and our purpose is clearest when systems are failing and lives are at stake. She moved to the observation window, gazing out at the spectacular view of the galactic core. In ancient Earth theaters, the most important person wasn't always the actor center stage. It was the prompter sitting unseen in the wings, ready to whisper the forgotten line that saved the performance. An apt metaphor, Vexthor acknowledged. We find fulfillment not in glory but in resilience, Rice continued, ensuring that regardless of what calamity befalls the mighty civilizations at the helm, someone remains ready to guide, repair, and rebuild. A gentle alert chimed, and a holographic report materialized before them. A minor reactor fluctuation in the Proxima sector, already contained by the emergency team stationed there. The incident report noted that a human engineer had identified the anomaly hours before automated systems detected it. Another crisis averted before it began, Zrelka observed. That's the ideal. Rice nodded. The best emergencies are the ones that never happen because someone was watching for the warning signs. Your people are strangely content with invisibility, Vexthor noted, her crystalline structure pulsing with curious patterns. Your contributions often go unrecognized precisely because they prevent noteworthy disasters. Rice smiled fully now. On Earth, we have a saying, the highest form of excellence is invisible. When we do our job perfectly, no one notices anything happened at all. As they conversed, the galactic map behind them displayed the current status of hegemony space. Millions of stars, thousands of worlds, hundreds of species, and scattered throughout, nearly invisible unless specifically highlighted, were the human contingents, positioned at critical junctures in vital systems. So this is why the most powerful creatures in the galaxy discover why humans sit in the rear, Vexthor said, her form illuminating with understanding. Yes, Rice replied simply, because from there, we see everything. Prepare for anything, and ensure that the story of civilization continues, no matter what tries to end it.